This is a podcast by the Straits Times.
Every day we encounter antisocial behaviour on the roads as we get our food and in our estates. And in Singapore, we've chosen to tackle such action through the letter of the law. The most recent example, new rules proposed in Parliament on driving, where drivers holding a phone will be committing an offence and people can submit photographs to the traffic police. These seem to build on our catch and fine approach to keeping Singapore clean, from high-rise littering to people who don't return trays and other kinds of municipal issues. But do laws shape society, or do societal values shape laws? And in the context of a country with a strong complaint culture, how much of this is shaped by public attitudes and a strong, legitimate emphasis on fairness versus a lack of trust in other Singaporeans to do the right thing? Essentially, what kind of Singapore do we really want to build in the next 10, 20 years? I'm Lin Suling, opinion editor at the Straits Times, and today I'm talking to Dr Tan Ern Ser, a known name in the study of Singapore society and sociology, who's an Adjunct Principal Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies. Ern Ser, welcome to In Your Opinion.
Thank you for having me.
I just wanted to start off with the fact that you're one of Singapore's foremost sociologists and you've studied the evolution of social trends, civic norms, and you've also talked at length about Singapore's aspiration to become a gracious society. Just taking stock, because Singapore's 61 years old this year, we're a country reaching seniorhood already. What words would you use to describe Singapore's society today?
Well, I would say that actually, of course, there are some bad hats, right? Maybe the bad hats could be amount to like 1 or 2%. And 1 or 2% of 6 million people is actually quite a lot of people in absolute terms. So I would say that by and large, I think Singaporeans are law-abiding. And I think many are actually, obeying the rules even when no one is watching, right? But it's just that a few bad hats, few a certain percentage, that actually give us a bad name.
But if you step back, what are the words that come to mind?
Well, I think we always think of Singapore as a fine society, right? That we don't do what is right only when there's a fine, or only when we're afraid of being punished, right? The idea of being punished, either be a big fine or going to jail or something, is just not something that we look forward to, right? Like there are Singaporeans, when they go overseas, they just sort of suddenly decide they don't comply by the rules anymore. Yeah, so even as I say that we do not want to sort of make it sound like all Singaporeans are bad, but the 1 or 2 or 3% is actually bad enough. They are the one who give us a bad name.
Just stepping back a bit more, right? You've said before that Singaporeans do sometimes exhibit what you call negative defensive mechanisms because we've got intense competition, a culture of casuism. But at the core of it, that we actually fundamentally desire to build a gracious and cohesive society. Do you still believe that?
Yeah, I believe so. Very often we still talk about education, right? How people should be educated and to be gracious and then to internalize this thing about being gracious, right? In other words, it is not external rules that cause you to be obedient, of the rules, but rather there's something in there, some kind of a moral compass that guides your action.
Let's concretize that, because it's when the rubber hits the road that we really truly know ourselves. So for example, road behaviour. The latest data shows that the number of road accidents are rising. Cell phone violations have spiked by nearly 40% in 2025 alone. So if we aspire truly to be a gracious society that is courteous, that's considerate, why is our baseline behaviour on the roads worsening?
Yeah, I think when someone gets into a car, they can transform to a different person. But again, by and large, I think most people are actually pretty good. Yeah, but there are that few percentage, right, whom the moment they get into a car, they don't really care anymore. They think, I really think that maybe they think of it as sort of muscle memory, right? They just get in, drive, and then they get to their destination. And they get very uptight or angry if they don't get their way. So there are those people who are impatient and they are always maybe rushing somewhere. Yeah, there are those folks. And I don't think they're always bad, but maybe being in the car, change them, in some way. The context matter. We may have pretty sweet in many other ways, in other contexts, but in the car, maybe we think that, I don't know, maybe the sense that we're in the car and people cannot catch us or unable to really enforce the rules, then we don't care, right? I mean, talking about enforcement, I think it's very much to do with enforcement too. Like holding your smartphone, I don't think it's easy to enforce. In a car, there could be a lot of other distractions. And many of them are actually not enforceable, right? If I had that gadget there that is signaling something all the time, I want to take a look at it. And taking a look at it for 1 or 2 seconds or maybe 3 could be actually fatal, right? Because, I mean, if you're on the road where there are not many cars, people are driving slowly and all that, it's quite safe, right? But you do not know what the dynamics is on the road, right?
But just coming back to what you said about how when you get into a car, something fundamentally changes. There's a bit of a tendency towards road rage, and there's a bit of a tendency towards a little more reckless and individualized behavior. Proposed changes to the Act, which now criminalizes holding a phone. Do you think that's an acknowledgement that public education efforts didn't work?
Yeah, but that applies to a lot of things, right? Despite, I mean, even for drug trafficking, for example, right, we still have drug traffickers. I mean, and the punishment are pretty serious, right? Pretty extreme, actually. Yeah, but I think, I think it could be more like when you're on the keyboard, right? You're not actually seeing anybody. You're not talking to people whom you think can that will affect your life. So maybe it's the same thing when you're in the car. It's like being behind a keyboard and you just hammer away, right? Whereas when you are with people whom you are responsible for, whose opinion that matters to you, I think you're a lot more careful. So if we are rude to a stranger, we feel, okay, so what, right? I mean, this person can't get me. Of course, although this day, it can always be someone can take a screenshot, take a picture of you, right, and then complain about you. Yeah. But otherwise, I would say the idea of being in the car maybe give you the impression that, the rest are all strangers. You don't need to care about them.
Okay. I hear you basically saying that the law therefore puts the onus on the driver and forces him to be alert to it. But maybe we can discuss the other side of it, which is also what the law does when it comes to the idea that the public can just submit photos that they take. Do you think that is, in a way, weaponizing citizens against one another? Because by encouraging people to whip up their phones, we're kind of institutionalizing and entrenching the idea that people should be guarded against each other.
Yeah, I think some years ago, I think one of the MPs actually suggested that, maybe people should go around taking photos of people who are littering, right?
And what's your view about that?
My view of that is that I think it's not a good idea because we don't want citizens to end up calling out one another, right? And I don't think it's going to be good. It's not a good idea anyway. Already we are trying to promote social integration, right? Community and all that. But if you have a community in which people are just calling out one another on such behavior, I think it's going to be very much, it will affect the sense of trust that people may have, right? You have to look over your shoulder because somebody is going to take a picture of you doing something, right? So I don't think it's a good idea to have people taking photographs.
But why not? What's the kind of behavior that you think they should be incentivized to take instead of taking out the phones? Yeah,
but I mean, having citizens sort of spilling the beans on other people, I thought it may not be good for a building community. Can you correct somebody without getting them into trouble? In this case, you are getting them into trouble, but can you correct somebody without getting them into trouble? But rather, it's more of a warning and that, maybe it's not right to do that. So why don't you stop doing it, right? So like if you saw someone littering, you're not about to take a picture and say, hey, I'm going to send it to the authorities, right? But rather you can say, hey, how about not doing it because, this is our community, right?
Like reaching out directly to the person.
Exactly. And that if you keep your own toilet clean, why are you shitting all over, because it's not your house, right? So I think if we can do that, of course, that will be preferable. But of course, I also agree that worst case scenario, maybe we have to do that. But we are talking about gracious society. We're talking about building community, right? So why are we doing this?
Just to take that idea further, so road traffic accidents, quite serious, quite understandable as to why you want to approach it from a crime and punishment perspective. But let's talk about the kinds of issues that aren't actually that serious. For example, the mandatory tray return laws, right? Who had been introduced, where it's a punishable offense if you don't return your tray. Why does a developed society need a threat of a fine to get people to return their trays? Shouldn't that be something we can take for granted, cleaning up after yourself?
Yeah, of course, there are some bad hats, right? Well, I think also Singaporeans, have a very strong sense of self-righteousness, right? It's like, if I'm not doing it, I'm not doing it, why are you doing it? So it's a sense of unfairness, right? Why are you doing it and getting away with it? So we don't want you to get away with it. Yeah. So in other words, it's like I'm going to obey the rules, whether it's something that I internalize or because I'm afraid of punishment. And so I don't want other people to be doing it because that sort of put a dent on my sense of fairness. Right. So it could be a strong sense of self-righteousness.
But at the same time also, the reality is that there were a lot of people who were not returning their trays. Just look at the stat where after fines were introduced, the tray return rate shot up from 65%, where it was moral suasion and people were being encouraged to return their trays, to about 90% after the law kicked in. And, many people would actually view that as sign of a successful policy.
Yeah.
But what would you say to those who might see this as a disappointing affirmation that we are a country that do not do things for the greater good? Only do it because it's a fine.
Of course, we are expecting 100%, right? That everybody should be doing it. But actually, let me just speak from the point of view of statistics. No matter how, there'll be a lot of people who comply 100%, and there'll be always that 3 or 4% who wouldn't. Yeah, I would say statistically it's inevitable that you'll find these kind of people, So actually 90% may not be the best, I think, but if we get 96%, I would say I'm happy.
So do you think that it's overly idealistic to expect that people will return their trays all the time?
I think it's idealistic that you expect 100%, everyone complying all the time. Yeah, but fortunately, it's a small percentage, and therefore, I think maybe what we need to do is to be able to stand out and say, hey, hello, don't do that.
Yeah.
If we dare to do it. But sometimes we are afraid that you get somebody really nasty and then you end up as a fight. That is something you have to avoid, right? I think by and large, Singaporeans, as I see it, very broadly speaking, I think we are quite non-confrontational. We don't want to create a scene. Sometimes that happens. People do fight and all that, right? But I think by and large, we don't really want to create a scene. If we think that somebody's going to be nasty, we'd rather not do it.
But surely a mechanism to correct what, and let's call it what it is, not returning your tray or littering or taking your phone out when you're driving is antisocial behaviour, right? And the way to correct it usually is society subjects you to some level of public shaming. Society tells you that you're wrong, you shouldn't be doing this. Someone tells the person directly. But when we are on the pathway towards making something a crime, making it such that immediately it becomes an offence with some level of retribution from the state.
Yeah.
Does that not abdicate responsibility for people who are bystanders to own that situation and then say, hey, please stop doing that?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I don't really want to contradict myself, right? But so maybe the way to put it is that I would prefer if people internalize the rules and they become part of their character, their personality or whatever, right? But there will be people whom you need to do something about it and call them out. Yeah? So the only issue is whether do you dare to do that? You may feel like doing it, but do you dare to do it? It's also the same thing about, the bystander behavior. Sometimes people just don't take action, You just stand there, you just watch. Or when you see something happen, you drive through, you're curious, but you're not going to do anything about it.
But if you just said that Singaporeans felt very self-righteous about these good actions and behaviours, why then do we feel paiseh?
You want to do it, but maybe you don't dare to do it. Yeah.
But just to press that point a little bit, right? On the one hand, while you're saying that people don't want to appear nasty and they don't want to get into a difficult situation with another person, the reality is that what then happens is a proliferation of a lot of these apps or services like the One Service, where people can submit to the authorities when there's errant behaviour. And when that happens, instead of tackling the issue itself, we then create this complaint culture.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you reconcile the fact that on the one hand, you want people to be able to tackle the situation themselves, but on the other hand, when they don't want to, for those reasons you mentioned, you want to give them some level of recourse, but in doing so, you inadvertently co-opt and enable the same kind of behavior that, power, say, online vigilantism and cancel culture. How do you reconcile that as a sociologist?
I suppose it's quite easy for people to sort of have a certain denial, right? It's like, okay, I see it, I don't like it, and I just drive by and forget about it because it doesn't concern me, right? Why should I be so capable, right? So the ability to numb your feelings about it and say, okay, it's not my business. Yeah, I mean, there are many strategies we can do because, I mean, we think of, let's say, cognitive dissonance, right? We see something that causes certain tension in us. Usually it makes us want to take action. But then on the other hand, we can also rationalize it away or deny. And therefore forget about that tension, you see, and think and rationalize it by saying, okay, not my business. Let someone else do it. Or let the authorities do it.
But when you have an app that enables you to submit pictures, then the decision isn't so much, I don't want to do something because I don't want to be capable, but, well, I can just do it quietly and anonymously, though.
Yeah.
Isn't that more problematic?
Yeah, I think that way you don't have to confront the person, right? You see someone doing it, and therefore maybe you're a lot more gutsy, right? Especially when you don't have to tell your name will be kept confidential, I believe, that no one's going to say, Akao complain about you, right? Go after him, right? So if that's the case, then I think people might be more gutsy to do it because you hate what you see and there's a convenient device where you can capture whatever.
But are we not just passing the buck to someone else to sort out that problem? Because if we're complaining, we care about it. It's our home. It's our estate.
When you see somebody doing it, right, it's right there and you don't want to have a fight, right? But whereas if you're, like behind the keyboard, maybe you're more willing to do something like that. I think a lot of complaints are actually behind the keyboard, right?
But aren't we outsourcing conflict resolution? And therefore, we're shortcutting the whole organic social process that is needed for the community to tackle these issues and to build some level of trust and tolerance and social norms.
Well, I guess then we will have to sort of, encourage some kind of a value shift, right? Shift in saying that when you see something wrong, take action, right? When you see an accident, make sure you call ambulance, rather than say, I just walk past, I think that requires a mindset change in our people that, it is okay. So maybe the authorities and, people of influence should maybe just give Singaporeans the permission structure, right? See, it's okay. It's okay to spill the beans when you see something that really is unacceptable.
What do you mean by spill the beans?
Well, that means you tell them, you sort of call them out and get them into some kind of trouble, right? So I think the only way is that can we change the culture and say that it is all right. It is all right to do it. Yeah.
Just conversely though, is there space for which such complaints could be legitimate? So for example, I think the devil's advocate would say that time-starved Singaporeans obviously don't have time to sort out all these issues on their own. So when they see something, since there are these platforms that has been created by authorities to resolve the issues that they see, whether it's high-rise littering or tray return, that's the legitimate form of action. I mean, where's the balance between these two points of views?
Well, I mean, it's sort of like if worse come to worse, right? Sort of ultimatum. And I think we have to resort to this.
So you see, it's a backstop, not a first resort.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something number one, I don't think it's something that you really want to do, right? To get people into trouble. But on the other hand, we know that something is wrong and therefore you should really stop it, right? Given your sense of self-righteousness about it, right? That I'm not doing it while you're doing it, right? Yeah, but worst case scenario, if they keep doing it, or if you think that, this is really too much, right? Then report it. Of course, when is it too much? Is it? Well, because sometimes you can still say, okay, not my business. But maybe we can tell people from now on, any wrongdoing of this kind, especially when it can lead to a very fatal accident, then I think it's your responsibility to do something about it. If somebody is sort of driving recklessly and, of course, holding the smartphone, then it's time to do something about it. Yeah. So it's always balancing a lot of things. There are trade-offs and all that, right? So in the end, what do? You want to get someone in trouble? You want to be a kepo and having to be a witness or something? I mean, there is a lot of things involved, right? So it's a lot easier to just drive through and say, okay, I saw something. It's not my business. Yeah.
I guess I'm hearing you say that basically it's a very fundamental negotiation in terms of wanting to create a country that has those values, but yet at the same time giving people the assurance that if something were to happen, they do have recourse and might not require them tackling the issue directly. Right. But maybe just to round off and to also step back, obviously this is a work in progress. And if you look back at the Singapore Kindness Movement, it was set up so many years ago, 30 years ago. And if you ask me, I think that was one of the markers of that desire to become this gracious society. So I'm just wondering, where do you think we are 30 years since the Singapore Kindness Movement was set up? On the one hand, there is that practical acknowledgement that, well, we'll see how and we'll try to get there. But on the other hand, there's also people who say that because Singapore is this very competitive environment, there is this vaunted attitude towards self-reliance, right? The detriment of, creating a sense of community and collective responsibility. And that means that when something happens, people don't feel this sense of collective responsibility to the community. Like, okay, I'm not going to litter because I don't really want that for my community. How do you think we can outrun this antisocial tendency that we've seen creep up? You say it's a small number of people, but clearly it has been big enough a problem to warrant the same approach being replicated across many laws and many areas of just daily living.
Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking more of like social pressure, right? It's not just the individual going around telling people off, right? But if you can bring in society is, of course, a very big term, or even community, right? But would you be able to have people who will back you up whenever you play this role, right? So it's like, do you have enough people giving you oxygen, to make you willing to do it? Or if let's say you are going to call somebody out and then everyone else just turn away and then run off. Then you feel that you're so exposed, right? You are the one,
Why like you're the troublemaker.
Yeah, why are you the capable one, you say, and the rest just don't care. But if, let's say, the rest, say in the bus, right, you have some of these unreasonable passengers, right, fellow commuters. And I mean, I once have come across somebody who just came too close and I said, please, can you just sort of maintain some distance, right? And that fellow got angry. And nobody said a thing. So finally, I just kept quiet and dropped at the next bus stop. Yeah. Because I'm not about to create a scene, because that person was all ready for a fight and I'm not ready. Yeah. But if you have a few fella nearby who say, hey, this is wrong, right? And then stop the person, I think that will help. So you don't feel that you are alone whenever you are doing this. When you do this and call out others and look around, nobody support you. Yeah, so community is also having the social support for others, who are also willing to stand up and be counted and to put pressure on the wrongdoing.
Maybe just casting an eye forward. So, at the last National Day rally, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong did express an aspiration to build a we first society. And that would prioritize, collective well-being and a sense of community. But given our conversation today, how hopeful are you of us achieving that goal? What would look like progress for you?
Yeah, I think I did sort of give a lecture about this, right? And then I think it has to be a society where first high trust, that people trust one another. But if you are going to be a society where it's always about self-reliance, rugged individualism, then it's like, okay, I mean, whatever I need to do, I can't count on anybody. I just count on myself. So can we have a society where we think we can be interdependent, right? Because right now, if you are self-reliant, you're talking about self-dependent, right? You cannot trust anybody to help you. And we all do need help. I mean, none of us can be 100% say we can do everything ourselves all the time. Yeah. So can we have a society where we emphasize the interdependency rather than self-dependence all the time? Yeah, I think that's how we get to our we first, right? Because you trust that when there's a need, somebody will be willing to come forward to help. Or not just somebody, but somebody's will be willing to come forward.
Well, Dr. Tan Ern Ser, thank you very much for your insights. You're listening to In Your Opinion, a podcast by the Straits Times. You can find links to other podcasts, opinion columns, and stories in our podcast show notes. This episode is edited by Hadi Rahim, and I'm Lin Suling signing off.
Send your feedback to podcast@sph.com.sg. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or within our Straits Times app. Thanks for listening.